Even after countless victims disappeared beneath the waves, the captain could never silence the ocean itself. Burned hulls, drifting wreckage, abandoned cargo, and scattered timbers became silent witnesses against him. Every attack drew the Royal Navy closer until his hidden anchorages and secret routes were finally uncovered. In the end, the man who murdered others to erase every trace of his crimes discovered that the sea remembers everything, and even the darkest pirate could never escape its judgment forever.
Enjoy the video, and don't forget to subscribe.
Trace your finger along the map from Nassau toward the Windward Passage and picture the year 1719 as the smell of rotting oak, boiling pine tar, damp hemp rigging, stale bilge water, sulfur lingering from recently fired cannon, and salt carried by a humid Caribbean wind drifted across dark green water beneath towering storm clouds while snapping canvas echoed through every shroud and stay. Few terrors of the Golden Age of Piracy inspired greater fear than a captain who refused to leave witnesses alive, because every survivor represented testimony that could identify a ship, its commander, its crew, its preferred hunting grounds, and the hidden anchorages where stolen cargo disappeared beneath layers of secrecy. During these violent years, the Atlantic became a network of floating rumors connected by frightened merchant captains whose sworn depositions allowed admiralty courts to issue warrants and Royal Navy squadrons to narrow their search. A swift pirate sloop displaced approximately 95 tons, measured nearly 83 feet along the keel, displayed pronounced tumble-home supported by massive white oak futtocks secured with hand-forged iron spikes nearly 11 inches long, and required repeated careening because tropical shipworms steadily consumed every exposed plank beneath the waterline. Oakum hammered deep into every seam expanded after absorbing seawater before repeated coatings of boiling pine tar created a flexible waterproof barrier capable of surviving months beneath relentless tropical heat. Every surviving witness threatened that carefully maintained machine of violence more than an entire broadside of enemy cannon, because memory itself could become the deadliest weapon in the Caribbean. The anonymous captain understood this reality with chilling precision, shaping every decision around the elimination of evidence rather than the pursuit of treasure alone. Before receiving his first command, he had likely sailed under legitimate letters of marque during the closing years of the War of the Spanish Succession, learning naval discipline, convoy tactics, and the legal distinction between privateering and outright piracy before peace transformed thousands of experienced seamen into unemployed men desperate for profit. Once the Black Flag replaced royal authority, his articles of agreement outwardly promised equal shares, compensation for wounds, and elected officers. Yet those promises concealed an increasingly ruthless doctrine, stating that captured crews represented future hangmen unless permanently silenced. Merchant brigs carrying sugar, indigo, tobacco, and dyewood commonly displaced between 120 and 160 tons, their slower hull forms sacrificing speed for cargo capacity while lightly armed with 4 to 10 carriage guns incapable of resisting determined pirate attack. Boarding usually began only after carefully aimed warning shots, but when resistance continued, the pirates unleashed bronze cannon cast from an alloy averaging roughly 88% copper and 10% tin. Each gun consumed black powder composed of approximately 75% saltpeter, 15% charcoal, and 10% sulfur, producing expanding gases that hurled solid iron round shot through oak planking, tearing long splinters from the inner hull that often killed more sailors than the projectile itself before terrified survivors faced a far darker fate. Once the merchant vessel surrendered, violence rarely ended because the captain believed silence had to be enforced with absolute certainty. Prisoners were assembled along the weather deck beneath swaying yards blackened by tar, while armed pirates searched every pocket for letters, navigation charts, logbooks, and personal journals capable of revealing names or descriptions. Ship's papers identifying cargo owners, ports of departure, insurance records, and customs seals were thrown into iron braziers until parchment curled into black ash carried away by the wind. Even carved nameboards fixed across the stern were hacked apart with broad axes before valuable timbers were burned. Experienced navigators among the prisoners were questioned about convoy schedules, naval patrol routes, hidden shoals, prevailing currents, and fresh water sources. But once every useful answer had been extracted, their value disappeared completely. The pirate vessel itself remained a masterpiece of constant maintenance. Standing rigging stretched beneath enormous tension through deadies and lanyards. Chain plates transferred mast loads directly into reinforced frames. Lodging knees supported deck beams against violent recoil, while breaching ropes restrained heavy cannon after every discharge. During long passages, sailors endlessly scraped marine growth from accessible hull sections, repaired chafed hemp lines, stitched torn canvas using heavy sail needles, greased wooden blocks with animal fat, and inspected mast partners for dangerous movement because structural failure during pursuit could destroy every hope of escape. To the captain, preserving the ship demanded relentless labor, while preserving his own identity demanded something even more terrible than perfect seamanship. The killings themselves were calculated rather than chaotic, reflecting a man convinced that fear and anonymity formed the strongest armor a pirate could possess. Survivors later reconstructed fragments only from abandoned wrecks, drifting debris, and empty vessels discovered miles from the attacks, because almost nobody remained alive to describe what had happened aboard. After valuables had been transferred by longboat, casks of powder, coils of rope, spare sailcloth, navigational instruments, barrels of salted provisions, and iron tools were carefully loaded into the pirate sloop before the captured ship was inspected from keelson to quarterdeck for anything useful. Pumps, capstan bars, spare spars, anchors weighing more than a ton, and even hand-forged hinges could be salvaged if time permitted. When destruction became necessary, slow matches ignited carefully placed powder charges beneath the afterhold where flames would spread through pitch, tar, oak timbers, and dry cordage before reaching the magazine. Heat forced moisture from the wood fibers until expanding gases burst through planking, collapsing decks into the glowing interior while mast sections crashed across the burning hull. If scuttling proved safer than fire, augers bored openings beneath the waterline after seacocks and pumps were disabled, allowing the Atlantic to pour steadily into the cargo spaces. Within hours, only floating hatch covers, broken yards, shattered casks, and scattered wreckage remained, leaving investigators with almost nothing capable of identifying either the victims or the men responsible. Yet absolute secrecy could never endure forever, because every voyage increased the number of frightened harbor masters, merchants, insurers, and naval officers comparing scattered fragments of evidence across the Atlantic. A cargo that vanished without arriving in Jamaica, a burned brig discovered drifting near Hispaniola, identical musket balls recovered from separate wrecks, and unusual sail repairs recognized by experienced dockyard shipwrights slowly formed a pattern. Admiralty investigators understood that even when no witnesses survived, ships themselves revealed stories through construction methods, ballast stones, surviving fasteners, distinctive gun calibers, and cargo manifests recovered from distant ports. The pirate captain attempted to counter this by constantly altering his appearance, replacing figureheads, repainting bulwarks, changing captured flags, shortening or extending spars, and exchanging recognizable cannon for newly captured pieces of similar bore. He shifted between hidden anchorages protected by reefs and mangrove channels where deeper naval frigates drawing over 15 feet of water could not safely pursue a shallow pirate sloop drawing barely 8. Nevertheless, every careening operation left traces upon isolated beaches. Every purchase of powder or sailcloth created whispers among traders, and every stolen cargo introduced goods whose sudden appearance attracted suspicion. The very campaign of exterminating witnesses that had protected him for years forced him into ever greater violence, drawing unprecedented attention from colonial governors determined to destroy the mysterious captain whose invisible trail was marked not by survivors, but by silent ships and empty horizons. In the end, the captain erased countless witnesses, yet he could never erase the evidence left upon the sea itself, where every burned hull, shattered mast, and vanished crew slowly exposed the monster he had tried so desperately to hide.